Today's video, we're going to talk about how to fix conversion tracking instantly once it starts working, or near instantly. This is all information that I've picked up over the last 10 plus years of running hundreds of different ad accounts for clients and having to be in charge of the conversion tracking for those clients and maintaining it throughout the process of running the ads. Because if you don't know already, conversion tracking is just as much, or should I say, getting results with ads is just as much about the tracking as it is everything else you're doing. Because the tracking has a huge impact on how the algorithm decides to run your ads. You know, you could start out with a campaign that gets you 10% of the results you need in terms of an ROI. A year later, you could be at the ROI you need just through the process of elimination of what the tracking does, feeding the data in, what works, what doesn't work, and get your end goal, which is why, by the way, most people don't make money with their ads when they start out, because they don't realize it's a process of figuring out where your customers are, whether you're talking about Facebook, Google, wherever. So with that said though, I actually mention all the time on the channel, not only you have to set up the right tracking, but you got to maintain it, if you will. Beyond that, you have to be smart at being able to fix your tracking on the fly, because what you're going to ultimately do is you're going to make a bunch of money and then the tracking is going to break and you're on the clock. And the longer that tracking doesn't work, the more your results are going to go down. And then even when you get the tracking fixed, it's going to take a while to get back. And you know, you can go completely out of business just by not being able to fix the tracking in a reasonable amount of time. So you should know these tips up front on how to fix your tracking quickly when it eventually breaks. Because it's not if it will break, it's just when. Maybe you'll get by a few years without it breaking at all. Eventually it's going to happen, because it basically happens to everybody. And it happens regardless if you think you're smart about not touching your site or whatever. The tracking just breaks randomly sometimes, and that's exactly why I decided to make this video here. Tell you what to do in those situations when seemingly your tracking is going to be broken for no reason at all. And what to specifically do when you are on the clock. You do got to get it fixed. The longer it's not fixed, the more money you're losing. With that said, good tracking can give you a massive edge on your account and running your account and scaling your ads on Google and Facebook and these other major platforms, but it could be completely at your detriment when it suddenly breaks. So you want to know what these things going in on your journey to scale the millions of dollars a year with your ads so you can deal with it when it eventually happens. So if you were wondering how to fix tracking quickly and efficiently, these are the main ways to do it, besides the typical, naturally check the code, make sure the code's working, which is not necessarily what I'm talking about here. So, and if you stay to the end of the video, I will explain, I'll give you a couple case studies as to how much the tracking data affects your results when you do it right, when you track sales, when you track all your sales, when you track, not your cart sales, but sales that come through the telephone, or when you track leads and then leads that turn into a sale, or leads that are qualified and tracking that at that level versus just the lead itself that is phone call or a form filled by itself. And then also when the tracking breaks, how much you can lose. Where we had a situation where we lost hundreds of thousands of dollars just because the tracking broke for 4 or 5 days and we didn't know what I'm telling you here. I'm an owner of Guaranteed PPC, an online advertising agency that specializes in guaranteeing results for clients. That is, we do not charge our clients management fees until we can get them a certain minimum lift in their profitability up front in excess of what our basic management fee is. We're the only agency that you can find out there that does a guarantee like this, which should tell you something about the quality of the services and more so the information you're going to receive on this particular video. And we're able to do that because I've got 20 years of advertising experience and I work on all the strategy and all the client accounts we have at our firm. So with that said, getting into the content here, there are three things you want to do when your tracking either outright stops working or intermittently stops working. Given a lot of people that get into running ads for their business don't realize, they say, oh, I'll take Corey's advice. I'll check my tracking goals every 30 days. I'll put a test transaction through, or I'll put a test form fill through, and that'll tell me if the tracking's even broken. That is not going to work, because sometimes your tracking just it intermittently works. Only half the sales are going through. 3/4 the sales are going through. You got to be able to spot that, which, by the way, the best way to spot that and deal with that is to have backup goals for every one of your key important goals. For cart purchases, it means having 2 cart purchasing goals that track a cart purchase, or 2 goals that track a phone call. So you can compare the goals to one another. So if one breaks, you immediately know there's an issue, because they should be exactly tracking the same or at a certain ratio different. And you go in there every 30 days, and instead of having to necessarily put even test transactions through, you can actually just look at the two goals. Are the numbers about the same? Yes. Okay, well, the tracking for that particular goal is probably working. For the most part, you know when your tracking's broken because you can't test it every day. I mean, your best bet would be to test it as much as you can. You can't test it. For most people, it's not realistic to test it every day. You know when your tracking's broken when your results go off the deep end. And it doesn't take very long. I mean, realistically, the longer you've been running your ads, ultimately, the sooner your ads are going to go into the gutter when the tracking breaks. But if you got an account where you're spending tens of thousands a month eventually already, you can have the tracking break for 3-4 days and your results are literally 60% of what they were before already, just from that one thing happening. Google's system is not smart enough to realize that maybe the tracking's not working right and to ignore the tracking data. No, it says, especially when you're using smart bidding, you're not getting the return that you want. We're going to start spending less. And then it's going to spend less and less and less. And eventually it's going to spend nothing and you're not making anything anymore. So if you rely heavily on online ads, it's not if you need to put these safeguards in place for your business. You damn well need to do it. So with that said, if your tracking breaks either outright or intermittently, here's the 3 things that you can get it back online as quickly as possible, learned over the 20 years I've been running ads and 10 years at this firm in particular. The first of which is check to see if the code is removed or overwritten on your website. I don't know how many times I've been working with clients and they have another tech guy or other agency helps them rebuild their website and they just delete all the tracking code. Why do they do this? Well, they hire people that don't actually ask any questions like, are you tracking anything? And so it gets overwritten and then we're trying to figure out why our campaign went off the rails. And then we finally realized that the client deleted our tracking code off the site. But in the meantime, we lost about 20 grand worth of sales between the time that we realized the code was gone and the time we got it replaced. So this is what you stand to lose once you scale up a campaign, which there's no point running an ad campaign unless you're going to scale it up because it's so expensive to get done right initially on a small spend. There is no return unless you scale it up. Ultimately, the code is gone. We'll have to replace it. Sometimes it'll get overwritten with other tracking code. Another agency will come in that they hired. That agency does SEO. They override our tracking code. Therefore, our code's screwed up. The code is hampered in some way through a website update that occurred on the website. So it wasn't outright deleted, but it's not firing the correct way anymore. The tag's not firing. With that, you usually want a tag inspection tool. All the main ad platforms have it to where you can identify if that tag's firing correctly or not. But any average Joe can use that, whether it's Facebook's or Google tag inspection tool, see if the code's not only on the site, but is it firing? Is it capable of firing? That's going to be typically your first stop in trying to figure out what's going on. And if your ads are not working, take it from me, the best place to start is to see if your tracking's still working, instead of starting to unravel all your campaigns. Because once you unravel your campaigns, before you get better results, because any change in your account is going to cause volatility. The algorithms don't like this. But B, if you make that change and it wasn't really the cause of the problem, now you're going to have to undo that change, which is going to cause you even more volatility and more negative results. So you had negative results before the change, then undoing it, even more negative results, and more time has elapsed from the time that your tracking broke to the time you fixed it, which is going to be even more money loss. You lose money 3 times if you make that mistake of just trying to think it's your ads that's the problem versus looking at the tracking first. So that's first. And then secondly, you're going to go ahead and check to see if any plugins are disconnected. If you're using CallRail like me, have an integration from CallRail to Google Ads, CallRail to Bing Ads to import the call data there. Check those plugins. A lot of times people through tracking things on Google Analytics 4 or Google Ads, they'll use a WordPress plugin or they'll use a certain plugin on their Shopify store. You got to check those plugins and see if they didn't get disconnected. Because a lot of times, going back to the whole coder was a bonehead thing, the coder that they had come into the site to do some basic website management said, I don't think you need this web plugin anymore. It's security risk. Let's get rid of it. And then they delete it and your tracking's broke and you now lost tons of money. So that would be your second thing you're going to do. And then the third thing that you're going to do is you're going to remove and reconnect any codes or plugins and then reactivate the plugins themselves and that you have. So what this means is, and this is the big secret of fixing the tracking more than anything else that people don't know about or in the industry do know about. For some damn reason, I'm not a programmer, so I didn't ask my tracking manager. Why is the technical reason for this? I don't necessarily need to know it or have it. But for some reason, sometimes to fix tracking, particularly when the tracking intermittently tracking the goals, the purchases, the form filled goal, whatever it is, taking the web code off the site and then replacing it on the site again will reset the system, and now the conversions will start going. When you know the tag's firing properly, that's the thing to do. Similar to that, plugins that allow you to have the tracking code on the website, whether it's a WordPress plugin, Shopify plugin, whatever, or Shopify app really, not plugin. Just by taking that app off and then turning it on again, the tracking suddenly just starts working again. It's like magic. Always do that first before going into deeper methods as to why your tracking's not working. But for the most part, if your tracking was working fine for a long time, and then you went ahead and did these 3 things right here, you're gonna fix the problem 90% of the time just by doing this. And you can get all this done in an hour, technically. Yes, it's gonna take you a while to realize the tracking is broken, because naturally your first, and I am guilty of this as well. The first thing you're going to want to do when your ad performance is down is blame your ads, not your tracking. The reason for that is a lot of times the tracking is only intermittently working. And so what you'll see is, purchases only fall by 10%, and then 15%, and then 20%. And it just doesn't look like the tracking caused that. But when the tracking breaks, that's exactly what you can expect to happen. The ad performance is going to slowly dip. And the longer you take to realize it's the tracking, the more money you're going to lose. And the more time it's going to take for your ads to recover and go back to where they were performance-wise once you finally get the tracking working. I almost think about this as like an emergency plan. You have an emergency plan in case your business starts on fire so people can get out without being burned to death. This is a contingency plan that you have that you give to a trusted employee, so that if the ad performance is not working, you can right away tell them execute said plan. You find out if the tracking is working right away and get going. And to go along with that, when you have done all these things, you want to go ahead and put a test form filled through, a test transaction through, and make sure the goals are showing up in the ad account. And of which, by the way, for Google Analytics 4, it's pretty easy to track that without having to put a test transaction through. However, these other ad platforms, what you ultimately have to do is just go ahead and trigger your own ad, click through, and then fill out that form, call, whatever it is, to see if the goal is going to show up. And ultimately, the ads are run off an algorithm on these platforms. It's hard to have the ad trigger for yourself. So in that case, at least when you're talking about search engine ads, what I would recommend you do is you set up a test campaign targeting a keyword nobody bids on and that there's no competition on. Hairy backs. Whatever keyword. That's your keyword you're going to target. Nobody targets that keyword. Your ad shows up for that keyword. You click through and then you try to see if the conversion goal is not working. We'll trigger a conversion once you put a test transaction through by physically clicking on the ad. And it's also cheaper, right? Because that cost per click is only going to be like 50 cents versus some of your other clicks that might be $10. Saved yourself a little money. If you're running display campaigns or YouTube campaigns on Google and you want to test that, in terms of make sure your goal is working again, well, the easiest thing to do is just to set up a search campaign targeting that weird keyword that nobody bids on. If it works for the search campaign, it'll work for the YouTube campaign. But if a goal works for one campaign in an account, it works for them all. The same thing could be said for Bing if you're doing any kind of display ads there, which not many of you do, but which most of the time it doesn't work, but it does work in some occasions, as we've seen before. On Facebook, it's also hard to put that test transaction through, but in that particular case, the way to get around it is to run a remarketing campaign and then try to get your own remarketing ad to trigger for yourself, click through, and then test it that way. If you're not sure how to set your ads up to test them, fix the issue, you still got an advanced issue, you can always reach out to me at guaranteedppc.com and I can go over with you what your situation is, get you fixed, get you back online to the next level with your ads once it is fixed. We can give you a bunch of ideas to get you more results and what we can guarantee for you along with it. Reach out to me if you're interested in having a conversation about that. We also have been selling ad templates. We've worked in this business, this ad agency, running ad agency for over 10 years now. And in that time, we've worked with and in over 100 different niche markets to get to the results or should I say, us operating the company during that time. And we've gotten results in a lot of markets as a result of that. 100 plus markets, if we've worked in your niche market before. You can buy from us straight up the ad templates, campaign templates, all of it that work for your market. So you can copy paste those into your account and get the same results we're getting, including the landing pages and everything else. We can tell you the results you're going to get with it up front so you know what you're standing to gain. At the very least, you should reach out to me and see what results we've got in your niche market so you can compare it to what you got and then you know what you stand to gain from it if you used it. If you're looking to start another business at any point in time, getting a template of one of the templates we have on file is like the smartest way to do it, in my opinion, because you already know A, the business will work, and B, how to market the ads, market the product or service in an effective way. The two hardest things that are going to cost you the most up front, that's already fixed for you up front. And you can even have a passive income taking these templates to generate leads and flipping the leads after marking them up, or subcontracting out all the work, or there's products that will sell that you can easily get from China. It's a commodity item that you can sell in a country that our client isn't in and have a turnkey e-commerce business. If you're interested in any of those other opportunities, let me know. You can definitely reach out to me at guaranteedppc.com if you're interested in that. Beyond that, if you have any questions about anything I covered here so far, you can always leave me a comment in the comment section below. I get back to every single person who leaves me a question or comment on this channel, usually within 24 hours time. So with all that said, now as we get into the case studies, as I mentioned, I would mention it if you stayed to the end of the video, tracking wise in general, okay, if you want to know the difference in the results, if you're an e-commerce business and you're getting any more than 10% of your orders through the phone, that is, you put the credit card order through a virtual terminal when somebody calls up and want to order that way, or somebody calls up and they say what they want to order and you put it through their website for them, either or, 10% or more of your orders are through the phone in either way there, you're going to make way less money than you could make getting that extra data in your account so the algorithm can actually optimize for all the orders, given the bigger orders are going to skew towards the phone versus the smaller orders through the cart. And we had a company who sold a paint product. Roughly 50% of all the sales were coming through the phone, 50% were coming through the cart. The client was just doing cart-based tracking before. We switched up to having the phone orders imported into the ad account. And we went from struggling to, making 6 figures a year. So now we're doing over 5 million a year. Granted, it was 5+ years to do that, but they were basically plateaued out. That's how much of a difference having all the data and accurate data flowing into your account makes in scaling a Google Ads account for your business, which is what we were using specifically. A combination of search ads, PMAX for shopping, display campaigns. Ultimately, that same company actually, in terms of case studies, I'll mention that we actually had one time during that particular time of scaling up, their busy season in any home goods or home services, the best sales come in during the springtime, basically April through June, because everybody does home improvement stuff in the spring. You want everybody on deck and everything to work perfectly during that springtime because that ends up being half of your yearly sales in a 3-month period of time and higher ROI than usual or than on an average throughout the year. So the very peak time was March for this particular company, or not March, May for this company. The very 1st of May is peak sales for that particular niche and company as a result. And the tracking was intermittently only working. It was only bringing in somewhere between half and 3/4 of the sales. I made the mistake of not realizing it's tracking longer than I should. We're talking 4 or 5 days into the process. Because sometimes just normally you're going to have bad weeks. That's why it's so darn hard to run an e-commerce business, because there's a lot of stuff that you can screw up that's it's unavoidable in a way. And with all your overhead, and if you're operating on tight margins, you can really screw your entire business up with something like this happening to you. So anyway, the tracking wasn't working. What we realized we had to do was unplug the tracking app on the Shopify store, reinstall it, and then the tracking started working again after that. But that wasn't until we tried everything else to try to get the tracking to work, which is why I wanted to make this video actually and explain how removing and then installing the tracking code or app is the answer. And we've had this worked for us several times since then. But the sales that we had for May compared to the previous May, and when you look at the ad spend, ultimately the profit that we were making that May versus the previous May was down a good 20% because we had almost a week where the tracking data was not working right. So the performance on the ad during that key time just crushed our entire month essentially. this stuff is going to be unavoidable. And so with that, the moral of the story is the quicker you can deal with the tracking break, the less you're going to lose when it eventually happens. On the flip side, you could say, well, isn't it a risk to react too quickly to your fixing your tracking because you're going to mess something up that isn't broken necessarily? The answer to that, though, just what I would do is to say, all of these things are not going to mess up your tracking. It's just going to make sure your tracking is working, and that's it. So if you think at all, if your tracking is not working, even after a couple days, go through this checklist here anyway, and you got all your bases covered. And maybe it was never broken, but also you never let it affect you long enough if it was broken that you're going to take a huge hit in your revenue like this particular company has or had. In terms of other case studies, we've had tons of local service companies where we started doing sales level tracking in our ad account. Import anytime a lead came in that was qualified, and then if the lead turned into a sale, the amount of resulted revenue into our ad account. So that the smart bidding system that we're using will actually have the profit level data to optimize our ads. And this was in the crime scene cleaning space, where about half of our leads that we were getting in off of our Google Ads account were good quality leads versus not. Once we switched to just having the system optimized for profit, roughly 90% of our leads were good quality leads. So every lead that we were paying for is basically on the mark, funneling in the right data, in which Google systems, I'm telling you, it's very, very good at getting you what you want if you filter in the right data. When your competition's not doing it and you are, they're actively going to gobble up all the leads that are the worst quality leads that don't normally turn into good jobs. Whereas you're going to be laser focused on the ones that do turn into good jobs at the same time. And inevitably, if you get far enough down the path with enough data, almost every single lead will be good quality and that you'll make a sale on. And yes, your cost per lead and cost per sale is going to go up a little bit, if you will, because your cost per lead is going to go up when you actually have the system go after better quality leads, because naturally you're going to bid more for the good quality leads, but your amount of quality leads that you're going to get as a whole from your niche market, given there's only so many people searching every month, is going to go up dramatically. We were making at least double the amount of revenue and profit once we switched over to this, because all the best leads we were gobbling them up, and because we were willing to pay more per lead, we'd actually get a higher share of the good quality leads on top of it. If you want to, in a simple local service market like cleaning services, plumbing services, if you want to make 2 to 3 times as much profit from your same amount of opportunities on Google search, just simply add in opportunity level tracking as to track when leads are qualified and the amount of resultant revenue, so you can track the big jobs that come in. Home services especially, there's huge jobs that you get once in a while. If you want the system to get you more of those, you have to feed in the right data. And that's how much more you can typically make in that type of market, or for that matter, any service market. Even if you're doing like architectural services and you're doing it nationwide, you'll still make 2-3 times, usually 3 times as much money doing sales level tracking in your account. If you want to know a lot more techniques like that and how to track those conversions, what they call through offline conversion tracking, importing sales to your account, subscribe to this channel and then watch my other videos. Ultimately, I talk about this stuff on a regular basis, as well as a number of other things that we're using to guarantee results for clients that are firm. And you're not going to find a better source of information for it, because I spend personally 40 hours a week doing ad strategy and testing at our firm. And I've been doing it over a decade here. And most of the people you're going to learn from platform on YouTube is people trying to make money on courses, advertising. They're not really running it into campaigns. You're getting information straight from the source here. Beyond that, I also have an excellent blog on my site at guaranteedppc.com/blog. That blog has all of our strategies that I'm using as well, laid out in a step-by-step format with screenshots, with everything that you need. You should definitely check that out as well if you appreciate the content on this channel. But with that said, okay, a lot of times you guys, you're trying to get your ads to work, and really you have an overarching issue that needs to be fixed first, whether it's your pricing strategy, phone handling strategy, or follow-up strategy, so on and so forth. If you want to know with 95% certainty that where you're stuck at, and if your ads really are the problem, or is it the ad that's the problem itself, it's stopping you from getting to the next level in your business in terms of sales growth, I implore you to reach out to me and get a 30-minute coaching call, because I can ask you a few questions in that 30-minute session already. Find out pretty much with 95% confidence what the issue is, so you can get it fixed, get going to the next milestone in your business already. And I can confidently say that because I do this all the time with different small business owners. And I have to be able to understand when we're wasting our time with the ads, have the tools we need to actually get to the next level with the ads that we're managing for the client, because we have to guarantee the results. So highly recommend that as well. And I've been doing coaching now for about 6 months, every single person who's been doing the coaching has come back for at least one other coaching session, which should tell you something about the quality of that coaching call, what it actually provides you. So with that said, I'm going to wrap everything up with that. Thank you very much for watching as usual, and I'll see you on the next one.
Remember when I said conversion tracking was important during this video? Well, this video here tells you how to do it.